Gee, it sure is boring around here.
Okay, I'll pull up.
Here is the map. Where do you wish to go?
When it comes to the pea shooter, it's almost hard to not overlook its flaws considering it's the first plant you receive, along with its status as the mascot of the franchise. But almost isn't enough, so let's continue. Firstly, the pea shooter is a straight shot attacking plant that costs 100 sun, recharges in 7.5 seconds, and attacks every 1.43 seconds. Taking into account the point of the game you receive it in, it can do a pretty good job beating the earlier levels because the zombies aren't very strong, fast, or numerous, but quickly becomes outclassed as the game progresses. The only worlds one could really use a pea shooter to any reasonable effect are the first and third worlds, considering the second and fourth worlds don't have naturally occurring sun, and the fifth world has a giant slant that prevents most straight shot plants from shooting very far forward. Not only this, but the same world it's introduced in quickly adds plants that very easily outpace the pea shooter in most other aspects. The only real reason it's useful at all in its home world is because it's the cheapest option for non-single use, and the zombies are slow and few compared to other worlds where it has more counters than a game of Chinese checkers. The sunflower is a sun-producing plant that costs 50 sun, recharges in 7.5 seconds, and produces 25 sun every 24 seconds. Along with the pea shooter, it is a series staple and one of the mascots of the franchise. However, this is where the similarities end, because the sunflower is actually useful throughout most of the game, with it really only dropping off temporarily in Worlds 2 and 4 due to the lack of naturally occurring sun to supplement its higher sun cost compared to the sun shroom, which is introduced at the start of World 2. Due to its relatively low sun cost compared to the attacking and utility plants you will most likely be using, the sunflower is dirt cheap and can rack up a considerable profit if you have many of them. The game suggests having at least 3, but some use 5 or even 10 sunflowers to really make getting those high cost plants out there a more streamlined process. The only times it isn't useful is when the sun shroom stands in for it during Worlds 2 and 4, when its even lower sun cost is more helpful than the sunflower's immediate utility, because the sun shroom doesn't produce 25 sun right after planting. The cherry bomb is a single-use explosive plant that costs 150 sun, recharges in 50 seconds, and explodes in a 3x3 radius 1.2 seconds after planting. This plant is invaluable in all levels of the game that allow you to choose your seeds, as it does more than enough damage to instantly kill most any zombie you will encounter while playing. Its higher sun cost and slow recharge time means it's not really coming into the picture often enough to be overpowered, but when you need results, Cherry Bomb has it in spades. There are other options when it comes to single-use explosive plants that fill a slightly different role but better. However, none of the other ones really have the power and the availability that Cherry Bomb has throughout the whole game, and in my opinion, is the superior explosive plant for general use. Walnuts are defensive plants that cost 50 sun, recharge in 50 seconds, and can take 4,000 damage before being eaten. The good parts are that Walnut has a lot of health and costs very little sun, which means his presence in your defense lineup won't cost much more than your sunflowers would. This allows Walnut to be used to stall the first few zombies in a level until you can gather enough sun to get your more expensive plants on the field to deal with them. Or if the zombies are getting a little too close to your offensive plants for your liking, just pop one down and you'll be fine for the time being. A nice set it and forget it plant, which lets you focus on building your offense more. The bad part is that during the later levels, multiple problems arise that lessens the usefulness of this plant. For starters, the zombie density during levels is usually higher, which means that you can sometimes have large groups of them walking down in one lane, ready to very quickly eat through any walnut's health. Secondly, the later levels also introduce zombies that can bypass or simply destroy the plant in one hit, making them not very useful if you lose one and have to wait almost a whole minute to plant another one, just for something else to come along and destroy it instantly. If you really want to get not only your money's worth, but also the zombies out, you should just have an instant use plant like Cherry Bomb because they have the same recharge, and by the time you need an instant use, you should already have many sunflowers planted. The Potato Mine is a single-use explosive plant that costs 25 sun, recharges in 50 seconds, and explodes in a 1x1 radius. A lot of people compare Cherry Bomb and Potato Mine, and for good reason. They're both unlocked at similar points in the game, fill similar roles, and take the same amount of recharge time. However, I think the differences between the two are what really make each one a plant worth using. Potato Mine is much cheaper than Cherry Bomb, 25 sun as opposed to 150 sun. Secondly, it only explodes when triggered by a zombie stepping on it, and takes time to arm itself instead of exploding 1.2 seconds after planting. This means that Potato Mine isn't very helpful in a pinch because not only does it destroy just one tile's worth of zombies, but it takes a considerable amount of time to prepare itself for detonation. Rather, its use is as an early game stalling plant. You place it in the same lane as the first zombie, far enough away for it to arm itself and to buy you time to have offensive plants ready for the other lanes. When it's introduced, it can be used to great effect, as there are only dirt tiles to plant on. And really, the only time it can't be used is sometimes in Worlds 3 and 4, because potato mines can't be placed in water on a lily pad. The Snow Pea is a straight-shot offensive plant that costs 175 sun, recharges in 7.5 seconds, and attacks every 1.43 seconds. From this information alone, you can probably tell it fills a similar role to the pea shooter, but slightly different. For starters, the peas that Snow Pea fires are frozen, which means that any zombie that it hits will have their movement speed cut in half. This means that, while it may only do as much damage as a pea shooter and costs almost twice as much, it can both single-handedly take down threats that a single pea shooter couldn't, but can also give more time for your other offensive plants to chip in damage on even larger targets that it itself couldn't handle, making it more suited to weaken single high-health targets. Because of this, it's unfortunately not very useful when dealing with large crowds of weaker zombies without support from other plants, as it will slow one zombie, that zombie falls behind the rest of the group, another one goes out in front, takes a hit, falls back, and so on. This makes the damage it does to large groups spread so thin that it can fail to kill even one zombie before it's too late. As far as usage goes, the high sun cost makes it hard to use in Worlds 2 and 4 because of the lack of naturally occurring sun, and the straight shot projectile means it won't be shooting very far in World 5 due to the slant on the roof. Other than that, it's a pretty solid offensive support plant. The Chomper is a short-range multi-use instant kill plant that costs 150 sun, recharges in 7.5 seconds, and attacks once every 42 seconds under normal conditions. The idea of a reusable instant kill sounds really good, but the way they implemented it wasn't to great effect. The Chomper eats the first zombie that it sees whole, and chews for 42 seconds before swallowing it and being ready to repeat the process. Because of this, Chomper is semi-usable with support during the first world or two, due to the lower zombie density, making Chomper's cooldown not as prevalent an issue. Unfortunately, when the difficulty starts picking up, Chomper doesn't start chewing faster, even in the face of large groups of zombies that would very quickly overwhelm and eat the Chomper before it has a chance to retaliate. If I were to compare it to another plant, I would describe Chomper as a self-resetting potato mine that could only kill one zombie at a time with a slightly reduced recharge and can be planted on a lily pad. The difference between the two, however, is that Potato Mine is 125 sun cheaper and can destroy multiple zombies at once within its range, while Chomper is more expensive and has a much lower destructive capacity. Though, there is one aspect in which Chomper can be considered unique. In the case of zombies that can't be eaten in one bite, it will repeatedly bite at its target until either it dies or the zombie dies. The problem is that this never really ends up being very helpful because the only zombies it can do this to can instantly kill Chomper in one hit, not giving it much time to deal any significant damage considering its attacking range consists of its own tile along with the tile in front of it. Since Chomper doesn't have any special properties that prevent it from being planted on lily pads, the only world where it isn't worse than using it in any other world is in Worlds 2 and 4 due to the lack of naturally occurring sun. The Repeater is a straight-shot offensive plant that costs 200 sun, recharges in 7.5 seconds, and shoots 2 Ps every 1.43 seconds. As the name and my short description implies, the Repeater is simply 2 pea shooters combined into one. As simple as it may sound, it actually ends up being a lot more useful than one might think, considering it's the same as just having 2 pea shooters. For instance, you may be able to use 2 pea shooters to the same effect, but it takes up more space on your lawn and takes longer to get out in the field, in comparison to a single repeater that costs the same amount and only needs 1 recharge cycle to achieve the same DPS. It excels in both taking out large groups of weaker zombies and high health single targets because of its exceptional damage and firing speed. There are other options when it comes to offensive plants for general use, but the other ones are too specialized to be as versatile as Repeater tends to be. The only real downside to Repeater is its high sun cost, preventing it from being used easily in Worlds 2 and 4, as well as the straight shot's basic attribute of hitting the slant on the roof in World 5. Overall, the plants introduced in World 1 tend to be either too weak, too slow, or too gimmicky for effective use throughout the whole game. However, when there are exceptions, they excel in a way that makes it a must-have for most parts of the game.